Welcome back to Scratching the Surface, a horror movie podcast. My name is Justin, aka Money,
And my name is Cody, aka Junes.
and happy freaking holidays. Merry Christmas. Cheers. Yes, to anyone it is currently December 15th, so 10 days before Christmas, but if you're listening prior, after, whatever, we wish you a happy holidays. This is the long-awaited Christmas special. We posted some content on TikTok. Make sure to check that out. Obviously posting on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube at Scratching the Surface 100. So make sure to check those out. And give us feedback. What do you guys, want to see? Me and Junes have been anticipating this Christmas special. So we are super excited to get into it. Junes, you want to introduce what we're going to be dissecting today?
Money, we will be dissecting Black Christmas from 1974. This one goes back a ways. This is the oldest movie we have reviewed here on the podcast so far. It felt just right to do this one. Looking at the poster art for Black Christmas from 1974 gives you all of the horror Christmas movie vibes you would want to see. And I think that's what kind of captured me when we were looking for a movie to discuss for this holiday season. It's one that's directed by Bob Clark. He's long gone, and I don't know any of his other movies, but this is one that's centralized around the idea of a home invasion, yet the people within the house have no idea that somebody's in there all the while. All of our characters throughout Black Christmas are completely oblivious to the fact that there is somebody in the house. And I love this idea. I think it is scary and frightening to think about that happening in real life on a holiday. And we talked about this on our Thanksgiving episode a little bit. That's something we wanted to see from Thanksgiving and didn't get it. We do get some of it here, although not quite as much as I was expecting. But Black Christmas is a movie about characters who are just trying to look out for each other. It's about people going missing on a college campus, people turning up dead, the cops get involved, try to help out the situation. Really, as a whole, that's what we have in Black Christmas in a nutshell, truly. And everything else just kind of goes from there.
Yeah, I love how you touched up on that, because you think of Christmas and it's like, man, nothing ever bad happens on Christmas. Maybe some family drama, but that's more of like Thanksgiving, I feel like. But when you think of horror, you just really don't think of Christmas. And for me, watching this the first time, I was shocked, and I liked the classicness, or esque, if you will, of a classic slasher film, which is what this is. And we get some really cool shots in this movie, and just the characters pretty solid. I liked it, and it's something that I didn't know what to expect going into it. Being made in 1974, the oldest film we've reviewed, also prior to Halloween 1, which came out in 78. So this is 4 years even earlier than the first ever Michael Myers being released. So it's almost like a predecessor for the genre, I think. Didn't know if you knew that, Junes, but 4 years before even Halloween 1 came out. So I don't know. I was keeping the bar kind of low, mid. I was like, you know what? Let's go into this. Let's see how it goes. So definitely, I think at Christmas, man, you're just sitting at home, you're with family, and for this to be a fraternity house in the movie, it takes a wild turn of events. So I'm gonna read the synopsis quick, just for anyone listening, get a visual in your head about what this movie is about. So let's get into it. So as winter break begins, a group of sorority sisters, including Jess, played by Olivia Hussey, and the often inebriated Barb, Margaret Kidder, begin to receive anonymous, vicious phone calls. Initially, Barb eggs the caller on, but stops when he responds threateningly. Soon, Barb's friend Claire, played by Lynn Griffin, goes missing from the sorority house, and a local adolescent girl is murdered, leading the girls to suspect a serial killer is on the loose, but no one realizes just how near the culprit is. So that is perfect, perfectly said, uh, and scripted for how this movie's played out. So, um, Junes, I understand you just watched it today. I'm curious to see what your thoughts are, your rating is. We will give ratings out at the end, so stay tuned for that. And I say we just kind of get into this, you know. So opening up, to me, very shocked because I had no idea going into this movie what it was gonna really be about. I didn't do much research on it, so I was very excited and anticipating how this was gonna play out. So I freaking loved the opening shot. We get just
Mhm.
first person POV, classic Michael. This was, like I said, 4 years before that even came out. So for them to just to be doing this, and we hear the breathing, we're in the eyes of this killer, and the aesthetic of just the house, the lights, the different colors going on, and him just stalking, kind of eyeing up the house was phenomenal. I love that.
That was something I really enjoyed from the get-go. This is a really good way to start out this type of movie that we want to see. We're wanting to see the home invasion. That's at least the idea I got from their poster art and from what I read online briefly. These are really good scenes here, seeing this supposed killer walking around this house while everybody inside is completely unaware of his presence. I also love that we get to see this potential killer work his way around the windows of the house, kind of peer into the party. Nobody inside again is aware of his presence. He's just kind of watching them enjoy their night, oblivious to his presence, like I say. And I love the way we show him climbing up on the side of the house, getting into
Yeah.
the attic, and kind of hunkering down for the majority of the movie in this attic. I love that because it's almost realistic. I look at here in Iowa, we have a famous murder of a family, the axe murders of Liska. There was a theory with these killings that the killer was hiding in the attic the whole night.
That's right.
It's
Yep.
very realistic and plausible for a killer to pull something like this off by getting in the attic and taking people out one by one because people aren't expecting the attic. They're looking at the front doors, they're checking the windows, they're making sure things are locked. They don't think about the attic. So that I love that. I thought that was a really good way to start out this movie and make us aware that there's something going to happen inside the house.
Hmm.
This guy is clearly within. How is he going to take people out? We don't know, but he's going to make it happen somehow. And some of these kills are surprising, and the characters are completely taken off guard.
Yeah. And to follow up with that too, I loved him climbing that house and getting into the attic. Granted, this is a sorority house with, and they mention it later in the movie, but there's like 10 girls living there. Back in the 70s, like, how often are you going to check the attic? You know, you're having a party. So that's how this movie kind of starts out with. We get that shot, and there's this party of 10 plus girls there, um, in their sorority house. And this house is huge. We get some different rooms. We see the main living room, um, and just an overview and a feel of the house, just as the killer was kind of eyeing it up too. And there's a big party going on, and we get introduced to some of the main characters like Jess, who's played by Olivia Hussey, Barb, who's Margaret Kidder, um, Mrs. Mack later on, played by Marion Waldman, and a bunch of other characters as well. Um, and then so they're having this party, and it just, I don't fully like go out of my way to watch some of these older movies, especially from the 70s, but just watching this, the dialogue, the vibes, the atmosphere, it felt so 70s, just girls having a good time, like,
Mhm.
honestly, like, I loved the environment there. And before you know it, here comes a phone call. Now I'm like, okay, this is interesting. and they literally describe him as the moaner. And watching this, I couldn't help myself but kind of chuckle at first, and then I was like very disturbed. The way that dude, uh, his dialogue and the different voices he'd have. What did you think of that? Because I'm curious to see how you just unfolded that basically.
The 70s in America was a really strange time. There were some weirdos running
Yeah,
running around the country. And there were a lot of instances where women at sororities were the target for some of these killers. And we saw that with like Ted Bundy and some other serial killers as well. So there is this thought within women's minds at the time of being fearful and worrying about their own safety. They want to have somebody there to protect them. They feel like if they're walking alone at night that they might get snatched.
yeah,
It's a scary world to live in, and it was a very real thing at that time, and we still have those issues today. But the 70s and the 80s, especially, there was a loss of respect of government and a loss of respect of authority and parent figures. There were a lot of people that just kind of went off course and really got messed up in the head. And for these women at the sorority, you feel their fear when they're listening to this phone call. This is clearly not good when they listen to it. It's definitely worrisome for them. These moans and these almost screams that you're hearing through the phone can't help to but to drive some fear within you. So for them to have those calls, definitely scary. And we have Barb, who is kind of the badass of the group of this sorority, and she
yeah,
gets on the phone and basically tells this guy to fuck off, and she hangs
yeah,
up the phone. The other ladies tell her, Barb, don't aggravate him. Like you might get him to do something you don't want him to do. So these scenes are good. I enjoy getting everybody introduced at once because there are quite a few characters that we have to
yeah,
accustom to and get used to. So it was nice to get that out of the way.
yeah, yeah. And basically, speaking of that phone call, I'm pretty sure that specific first call we get ends with him saying, "I'm gonna kill you," or "I'm going to kill you,"
Yes. Yep.
and that kind of shuts her up, like kind of puts her in her place, like you don't know who you're really dealing with. Clearly, she doesn't, but I thought that was also really cool, and it just kind of humbled her a little bit because you know, she's like, yeah, I've had a couple. She's pretty drunk, and she's drinking whiskey or whatever,
Hmm.
and straight liquor, and so she's probably feeling herself, feeling cocky, like, hey, I'm gonna show off in front of these girls and talk some shit back to this guy because apparently it's been going on, and
Yep.
what better time to do it when you probably have some alcohol in you and you're feeling a little loose. So I don't know. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, you're
Um,
right. They had these calls happen before. I don't know how long it
yeah.
had been going on. I would imagine a few days at least that
Oh, at
this
least.
stranger
Yeah.
had been calling them and doing these weird things. So, and then we have Claire, one of the sorority girls in this group. She's clearly frustrated with Barb. They definitely don't get along. Barb is kind of this really extroverted, outgoing woman, and Claire is more reserved, and she doesn't really care for Barb's ways of doing life. And
Yeah.
Claire basically says that she's packing up and she's heading home, I believe is where she was heading. So she goes up to her room to get packed and to get out of the house. Guess who's up there, Money? Our stranger in the
Yep.
beginning who climbed through the attic. He makes his way into the bedroom here of Claire's room. Claire is completely unaware of his presence here in the room, and he ends up in the closet. She's checking it to get some clothes, and he reaches out behind her, I think, and pulls this bag over her head, and she
Mhm.
essentially suffocates to death. We don't really get to see all those scenes, not that we needed to, but it was pretty brief. But we do get a zoom out of her in the chair of that bedroom with the bag on her head, and clearly she has died. We can see how much she was trying to suck in air because that bag was pretty much inside her mouth. So she definitely
Yeah.
suffocated to death in a horrendous way. So we get introduced right away to the fact that this is in fact a killer. We know this stranger is potentially going to kill people. We now know for sure that the other girls in the house are in potential danger. They have no clue he's in there. When they find out, we don't know. this is something that surprised me, Money, a little bit, and probably an area of the movie that could have been changed or altered would be to get us going and get us to the kills a little faster. We have Claire taken out early on here, like I just said, but it takes a while for other things to develop as to kills and whereabouts, getting the police involved. All of that took a little bit to get going.
Yeah, definitely. We find out he's a killer, so we know the guy's intentions, and this is okay. This is going to be your classic slasher home invasion, and I agree. Like that kill happened, and like a lot of movies, they slow the pace way too far down, and like you said, before we get kind of rolling with the ball with the killer, we get so much backstory with different characters, boyfriends, police, things like that. I I don't know. I got mixed feelings about it, but it's
Mhm.
a little bit worse, like negative than positive. So,
Yeah, talking
you make a
about
great point.
boyfriends, we got 2 boyfriends in this movie, both
Yep.
pretty undesirable characters. I didn't really care for either of them. I didn't mind them, and obviously, we have the main character for Peter, played by Keir Dullea, who played, Peter Bowman in 2001: Space Odyssey, which is cool to see. I did not expect him to be in this type of movie. He was here, though, as Peter, the boyfriend of, I believe, Jess throughout the movie. And then we also had Chris, who was the boyfriend of Claire. So their characters are both they're just mid at best. They really don't
Yeah.
have a whole lot of effect on the story. They really don't progress the story a whole lot. They ask Chris some questions early on when Claire initially goes missing about their relationship together and how he was dealing with any kind of disagreements they were having as a couple, trying to
Right.
just cross out the suspects. And Peter throughout the movie is having a hard time with Jess because they are having a huge, very big disagreement, I should say, on the baby that they
hmm
made together. She's not very far along. I think she just found out basically in this movie, Jess did, and she's telling Peter that she wants to abort this child. That's a terrible thing in my mind to do. And for Jess, she's a woman, she can make that choice. Peter is struggling with it very much throughout the movie. But to be honest, that really is all those characters are in this movie for, really. Chris is Claire's
It's
boyfriend. That's about it. And then we've got Peter is with Jess in disagreement about the baby. That's really about the
yeah.
gist of their characters in this film.
Yeah, Chris feels like a void he is filling to the police, basically, like a third party, like, hey, you're in a relationship, so we're just going to question you. And Peter is just obviously the main character, Jess's boyfriend. So it's like, well, we're going to question him too. And we kind of learn a little bit more about him. And also with Claire, we actually get introduced to her dad, James Edmund, played by James Edmund, who is Mr. Harrison in the movie, and he gets thrown in pretty quickly, and he gets quite a bit of freaking screen time. They have and also Mrs. Mack, the house mother, if you will, for the sorority house, who is a raging alcoholic. Pretty sure, yeah, nice. She's clearly over the age, and I don't know. Obviously, drinking is like probably prohibited there, so
Yeah.
he wants to keep a clean image, so she's just hiding
She's hiding it in the
all these
Bible.
liquor
She's
bottles.
hiding it inside the toilet there in
That
the back.
Bible scene was hilarious. That was hilarious.
Yeah.
The cut out of the pages. And so they have some conversation. Mr. Harrison's obviously concerned. Claire was actually supposed to meet him like on campus or something that next day at like 1 o'clock. She doesn't show. He gets worried. He goes to see the house mother, if you will, and they have a lot of dialogue. They're trying to figure some things out. I think Jess gets thrown into it. And then, yeah, we meet Chris at the hockey rink. And before you know it, after, you know, probably 10, 15 minutes of that, of unfolding that kind of questioning, we get introduced to a few policemen or detectives, if you will. And one of the main ones was Sergeant Nash, who is like the front desk clerk, if you will, to the police station. He's in this quite a bit too. And he's kind of portrayed as this dumb cop.
Yep.
Uh, just dumb guy who can't he can't like, I feel like he's smart in ways and then he's dumb in a lot of ways. And we'll get into that a little bit later as the movie goes on. But, and also, I think his name is Lieutenant Ken Fuller, played by John Saxon, who I think's in a couple different movies as a cop as well, or as a detective. So cool to see him in here because I recognized him as soon as I saw him. And we get a lot of questioning at the police station. You know, for a 70s movie, it's pretty simple dialogue, straightforward. And Barb gets thrown in the mix, kind of giving the cop shit, and she's drunk there too. Again, reminder, this is the same, I believe it's the same night. Or no, sorry, it's the following day because we get introduced to Mr. Harrison, and that's when everything kind of starts unfolding. So, Junes, at this point in the movie, what are you thinking? Because we get introduced to the cops, they know Claire's missing, and then before you know it, there's a search party going on.
Yeah, I will say I did kind of enjoy Lieutenant Fuller. I kind of liked his character. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe he's just too, maybe he's macho, and maybe that's why I liked him. I don't know. I enjoyed him. He seemed like he cared about what was going on and he was actually trying to investigate like an investigator should. Whereas you had the cop Nash, who was very unproactive when it came to acting on the information these people were trying to give him. There is a
yeah.
potential killer out there. Help us. And
Also,
Nash is just
also
sitting there writing him
that
off.
other that other detective who was laughing multiple times in this movie because Barb was making up fake shit,
Oh,
giving him false information, and he has no idea. Fellatio FE or however she says it. So that was hilarious.
yeah,
He's like a comedic relief to it. He's
yeah.
just like I don't know. He's a funny guy. Definitely different though, but I like how they threw him in
Mhm.
there for that. So
This part of the movie, I feel like we're going to progress through this pretty quick. There's not a whole lot that goes on that's really,
mm-mm.
really grabs your attention. We just have a lot of time spent between the cops and the sorority girls. The cops stop by the house. They ask them some questions. They end up tapping the phone to the house. And in the case that if they get a call, they will be able to listen to it on the other line and try to track down the location of where the call is coming from. This is about the only big time progression. We have more scenes with Peter and Jess talking about their potential aborted child. They're having those disagreements. We're still trying to find Claire. This is where we start seeing some of the major search parties go into effect within the campus. And we have, a group of 30 to 40 people in these scenes that we see go
Mm-hmm.
looking. We've got some search dogs as well. And what they end up finding is not actually Claire. It's another girl who went missing, and I can't remember her last name in this. Let's see here. Mrs. Quaife was the mom. So the last name was Quaife. Interesting last name. That's not something I've heard before. But, anyways, they find this girl dead when they're doing this search party. We
Yeah.
never actually see what she looked like. I wish they kind of would have
No.
seen it. I was really
Again, off
wondering.
screen.
Yeah.
Again, off screen. It pisses me off
Yeah.
because that's how most of these kills are. So that's my one major thing too. Is like I
Show me
get
that
it.
shit.
Set early 70s. What can you do? But
Yeah.
like throw in practical effects. Like give us something. So yeah, we hear like screams, the dog's just going crazy, and everyone
Mhm.
runs over, and it's all off screen. It's like, ugh. So, and then it just pans to the next scene. So I'm like, well, okay, and they don't like announce it right away either. They leave it completely
Mhm.
a mystery. So yeah, but like you said, it progresses really fast, and so far in the movie we have a couple kills already, and obviously we do as well get more phone calls just throughout this whole thing. I don't know how many times that damn phone rang, but it was a lot. And more creepy calls from the killer, who's like yelling Billy, Billy, like just sound like Cartman from South Park. I don't know. Literally, like I can't even describe it. Anybody who's seen it knows what I'm talking
It's
about.
so hard to describe it.
It's
It's
so
such a
just
different. I don't
if
know,
you want to
man.
just look that up, go on YouTube and look up a scene of that because
Mm.
it's a lot. Um, but yeah. Anyway, where was I?
So actually, we should touch on this, by the way.
Yeah.
The house mother, we will touch on her death here. This wasn't a bad death,
Oh,
but
yes,
it could
yes.
have been better. We have
Could have been
the
so
house
much better.
mother. Yep, she hears the cat meowing from the attic, and she goes and
Claude,
yep, she goes and yeah, she's yelling at Claude. She goes and
Claude.
checks out the attic, and she looks up. She peers her head in. She doesn't really see anything, and she does eventually wide-eyed stare and find bum 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 Claire
Claire.
sitting in a
Yep.
chair in the attic with the mask or the bag on her head, still dead, which is, I mean, she ages a little bit in terms of decaying in this
She
movie.
decays, yeah, a
Yeah,
little
she
bit.
has to be decaying, but she sees her body. She's very shocked to see this. She kind of pans her head a little bit to the right, and this is where she sees the killer. But again, we're not revealed the killer's face. We don't see the killer's face. We can see the killer's holding some type of hook with like a pulley system. And he basically, once she turns and sees him, he just slings that hook at her and it right up her neck. And then the pulley brings her up, and she's basically hanging there the rest of the movie in the attic.
Yeah, yeah. One of my favorite shots in this movie, there's another one, but one of my favorites is this, where we see the first person point of view shot of him death gripping that hook like he is just
Mm-hmm.
ready to soar that thing into space. That was really, really cool.
That
And
was
if anyone
tense.
knows what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. That was intense. And yeah, she turns, boom. I think it just gets caught in her neck, and she goes flying up the attic. You see a shoe kind of dangle off, and then her feet just whoop, like suck
Mhm.
through the attic opening, if you will. And she just hangs there, literally hangs out there the whole movie. so,
That's crazy.
um, so now we got, I think she was the second death. I can't remember. And then,
Yep,
yeah,
she was the second death. That's correct.
we have that search party death. So there's a
Mhm.
few deaths at this point in the movie.
At
So,
this point, we still have Phil left. We have Jess left. We have Peter still. We have the
yep.
cops. They
And
do end
there's,
up bringing a cop over to the house. The
they
lieutenant
do.
does. He sets up a cop outside in a car just to have some overwatch of the house. How
Hmm.
much good does he do? We'll see. But yes, we do have some involvement, like we said, with the cops trying to help out. They tap the phone. They're waiting for that next phone call. Not a whole lot else goes on that's really significant unless you can think of something different, money.
I was just gonna say too, we learn a little bit more about Peter, and he's actually like a pianist or a
Mm-hmm.
musician.
Yep.
And he has this like performance he's really looking forward to, and it goes horribly wrong. And he ends up taking a mic holder or the stand for the mic holder and smashes a piano because he's so pissed off. And he's starting to kind of turn into this weird character. And the movie really starts portraying him as a bad figure, if you will. And his language changes towards Jess. He kind of starts cussing at her. He's very short tempered. Um, it's stern, like straight to the point, and it's almost like his way or the highway. And Jess just does not take it well. And they have a lot of disagreements, and we saw that early on. But other than that, yeah, with Peter and them, another character I think we forgot to mention too was Phil. Lots of screen time too. Um, who again, she at this point in the movie also dies off screen. She simply walks in her room and has the door open, and the door is kind of, she's, I think she's pushing it really slow, kind of not paying attention, and then it slams shut like the killer's just already waiting there.
Mm-hmm.
And again, an off-screen death, and I think we're at like 4 deaths at this point in the movie.
Yeah, Barb was
um
killed too in her bed while she was sleeping. And
and
that's
that's
the
what I was
only
just gonna hit.
one, yeah, that we really saw any kind of
Yep.
action on the killing. We do actually get some moments there where the killer grabs some of these little glass objects. I don't know, they're the shape
It's
of
like a,
some
it was a
animals.
glass like unicorn, I think.
Yeah, something
It
like
had a
that.
huge spike on its
Yep.
head, and it was glass. And this was my favorite moment in the movie. I don't know about you. And the shots we get, the killer just both hands up,
Yes.
death gripping
Great.
it,
Great.
just like it wasn't a freeze frame, but like we got a second or two of him like just
Hmm.
giving it his all,
And
winding up into it.
I love that you say that because one of the main poster arts they have as well is of that image. And clearly it's an
Yeah.
effective one and that stuck with people
Oh,
in some sort of way.
yeah.
And is why I think we both would agree that's probably one of the better scenes overall throughout the entirety of the film.
For sure. It was for me. That and the killer with Mrs. Max death, that shot we got with her. So
Mhm.
when he's holding that hook. So very, very cool. So they're both dead in this bedroom. And I think we're up to like 6 kills maybe at this
Yep.
point. And yeah, I think at this point we get more phone calls and the police are like, hey, you know, this whole time they've been saying you got to keep him on the line longer. So this
Mhm.
guy at the what did they even call that? Like the like facility or
Yeah,
something
something like
where
the
they
telephone company, they I don't know if they have a main
the telephone
location where they're
company
able to track where these
or just
calls are actually going out from. That was what I was wondering. Maybe that was more of a thing back then. I'm not really sure.
it had to have been
I mean, I was
with like landline phones.
yeah, I
Yeah.
would have to look that up, but that could very well be the case. And they struggled. I
Yeah.
think they tried this and it did get a little bit repetitive. I think they tried unsuccessfully 2 times with the phone
I think
calls.
it was at least 2. Yeah.
Yep.
I think they
So
got it
that
on the 3rd.
they got it on the 3rd try. It definitely took some time because every time they were on the phone was they got Billy on that phone with them for maybe 15 seconds, 20 seconds, and then it would cut
Yeah.
out. But
Yeah.
that 3rd phone call, I bet he was on there for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and he just kept going.
Yeah.
Billy, 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 over and
Yeah.
over. So yeah, they were able to track him down. And that was a good revelation, I will say, in the movie. We kind of saw it coming, of course. We knew the
Yep.
killer was in the house. So it wasn't quite as surprising as it could have been. But for the cops, of course, and for the
Yeah.
sorority girls or for Jess still in the house, that's absolutely frightening. I'd be scared shitless if I
Yep.
hear the cops tell me, walk outside, Jess, just walk outside, don't ask questions, just go out. And
Yep.
she's, of course, curious. She wants to know why. Why do you want me to walk out?
Uh
But before we really touch on those final scenes, I want to make sure we're not missing anything else of significance. There was a couple scenes I did like with Peter. I can appreciate the fact that they were trying to make us question who the actual killer was. There was a moment there with Peter after he leaves the house, or after the cops leave the house. We see a figure in the trees across the street, and it's dark. You can barely see this figure, and the figure pops out, and we can see that it is Peter. So
yep.
he looks very questionable in that scene. He looks like he might be up to no good. Looks very distrustful. So I do like that they try to get us thinking a little bit more as to who the actual killer could be.
And that's why I said earlier too, they kind of start portraying him as this bad
Mhm,
figure. And to see him crawl out of a tree down, just completely pissed off and like
mhm.
still mad at Jess for this whole baby thing, his piano rehearsal, whatever went wrong. So this guy's just fuming at this point and call it you know, if you want to call it bad timing, if you will, or wrong place, wrong time. Because at this point, like you said, we get the phone call and Jess is, you know, on the phone with the cops. They're able to track him. The guy at this telephone company says, hey, the calls are coming from the house. And uh Fuller is like, no,
Yeah.
dumbass. The calls are coming uh in from the house, not out. Like they're going into the house, they're not going out. He's like, no, it's both. And that's when, yeah, like you said, he calls Jess right away. They end their conversation. He calls her and, hey, get out, don't ask questions. So, and I believe it was Nash actually on the phone
Yes.
with her, and he was like, the killer is in the house. You're not alone. The killer's in the house. And Jess screams to Phil and Barb,
Mhm.
like top of her lungs, no response. So of course she takes a fire poker, retaliates. Curiosity gets to her, and yeah, what you got?
This is what it should have been the whole time. I did enjoy these parts. This house was
Yes,
pretty damn creepy in the upstairs, and
yes.
we have that 70s grainy film. I thought that was fucking awesome. I wish we got more of that. We should have. It's
Hmm.
very, very unfortunate because when you imagine screaming out to your roommates at your college house, your sorority house, and you hear nothing, but you know they're fucking there, that's petrifying. I would hate that. I would be shitting my
Yeah,
pants at that point.
yeah. You're just, and we get the shot of her like it's this phone she's at. There's a huge stairwell behind her, so like just the image of like a dude standing there
Yep.
also. And speaking of image standing there, Peter actually at this point catches Jess off guard. We thought the killer was there the whole time because again, we see this first person shot, and it ends
Mhm.
up being Peter. He like creeps up on her, and I'm like, is he the killer?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking at this point.
They
So
did enough to make you wonder if.
yeah,
And like
yes,
I say, I can value that in terms of a plot direction and giving these characters some time to
right.
make us think a little bit. I can appreciate that.
So they get some dialogue, and pretty soon she Jess goes upstairs. I think Peter leaves. I can't really remember. And she goes to check on her friends, Phil and Barb, and we see the creepy eye through the door. The door's just cracked barely, and we see like a bloodshot eye, crazed looking eye, done very well. And I don't know if he's like Agnes or it's me, Billy, or something like that. And she freaks out, slams the door on him. And at this point, too, we see Phil and Barb actually in bed together, dead, just plopped up together too. What did you think of that scene? Because again, it's starting to pick up here. We're getting some action. Like my heart's racing a little bit. I'm like, okay, here we go. Like something big's gonna unfold. So that's what I was thinking. I'm curious how you were at this point in the film.
Yeah, those are shocking scenes. I'm glad they revealed some of it to us instead of just
Hmm.
keeping it off screen. I like to somewhat see what happened there because I imagine they were brutal. So I'm glad they gave us some time to
Yeah,
that. To at least, I mean, you come for a horror movie, you do expect that. So it's good that they did this. And I also
yeah,
like those scenes with Peter in the basement. It's kind of funny. He's sitting there
yeah.
scratching at that basement window there, trying to scratch the ice off of it so he can kind of peer in.
He looked
And he
creepy as
did look
hell.
creepy there, and you could
That
see
was
the fear in
creepy.
Jess's eyes. I think she was convinced if Peter comes in here, I might fucking kill him. So I do
Yeah,
like those parts we get and the moments in those parts were really well constructed. We have him break in through the glass. He comes down. He's trying to ask her reasonably, what are you doing down here? Why is the
yeah.
door locked? Like, what are you doing here?
He's just oh, I don't know how I feel, dude, because it's like, so prior before that, the killer is actually pounding on that basement door that just
Yes.
locks, and then we see a figure in the window, like the silhouette, and then it kind of moves and goes to another window,
Hmm.
and then that's when we for sure know that it's Peter
Yep.
because he scrapes the ice, he actually breaks the window out. Why would okay if you're her boyfriend? Why are you doing that? Why wouldn't you just go through the front door? Like this is very killer like vibes that Jess is getting. Why like if I were her, I'd be like, why is my boyfriend like this concerned? Or like he breaks out a window, goes in, acts like nothing's wrong. Such a calm voice this dude has throughout the whole movie. And yeah, it's like, what's wrong? You like you've seen a ghost, like you look like you've seen a ghost. It like makes no sense. And he kind of starts approaching her, and again off screen he dies, I believe. I think it's off screen.
Yes, it is because the cops end up showing up either
Oh,
the
that's
same
right.
night or the next day, and they find the two of them in the basement there.
Yeah, it's
He
that same
clearly,
night. Yep.
yep, he clearly has been killed by presumably Jess. Jess is almost weighed down by the body of
Yeah.
Peter laying on top of her.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know how she killed him and what manner, but we know somehow he fell down on her and she was pretty much knocked out unconscious. She's alive, but she was
Yeah.
unconscious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, the cops ran in because they knew the calls were coming from the house. So they knew something was up, so they had to charge in. And actually, we get a cool shot of that too. That police officer sitting in his car outside died as well.
Hmm.
So I think there's I want to say there's 9 or 10 deaths in this movie.
Holy
I don't think
crap.
there's
So much happened off scene. Now that we're talking about this and
right.
looking back at it. Holy
Yeah,
crap. We didn't see
there's about 9 deaths. I don't think there's quite 10, but
we
8 or 9, I'd say.
did not
But
get a sniff of the cop getting killed. Not at all.
so I've been wondering because I've been super curious. I'm just gonna ask because how did you feel about the ending of this movie with Jess in bed? Like, was it just what? Like, did it feel right? Do you think they could have changed it? What do you think?
Money, frankly, I don't know what your thoughts are. I think this is the best part of the movie as a whole. Everything else is okay at best. This is the best part of the movie. I actually quite enjoyed the ending, and you may disagree with me, but I
Hmm.
love the idea of them zooming out on this Christmas house. Remember, we came into this movie with the Christmas music in the background. It's the holidays. It's a
Yeah.
cheerful season. We're all happy. And at the end, we have this similar zoom out of the house from the main attic window where we start zooming out from.
Oh yeah.
We see the body of Claire inside of the attic with the bag on her head still. She may have been decaying now for a full day and a half to 2 days. We don't really know for sure, but either
Two
way, we
days.
also
Yeah.
see the house mother still hanging. And as we zoom out of that window from the attic, I love that. I think that's great. It lets us know that this is going to continue possibly for another few people because we do see outside on the front porch. I don't know if it was the lieutenant or one of the deputies,
I think it was
but
just a
he,
deputy dude,
yep,
like guy on watch. I don't know.
hmm, he hears that phone ring, and then he goes back inside, and we
That.
get that still shot of the house. I think that is a great ending. That was by far easily the best part of this movie
Oh
for
yeah.
me. For me,
Yeah. I freaking I freaking love this ending because it carries on kind of this legacy, and now there's a franchise of it. There's 3 movies out. So they've been able to do that because of how they ended this. And really how we get to there too is they get Jess up into her bedroom or a spare bedroom, I don't know. Everyone's in there. The press is there. They want statements, whatever. Guys trying to get him out, and Mr. Harrison goes into shock just randomly. So there's like people dragging him out, and they basically, the doctor tells him, yeah, she's going to be unconscious for at least 4 hours, maybe not till like 1 p.m. the next day or something. So she's just done. And things just happen where everyone leaves. And I'm like, well, okay, so this is weird. Like, why? I don't know. I feel like the movie was definitely still going to do something. And you hit that scene perfect with how it ended. Um, we get a cool shot too of like the addict, and you just hear giggling and singing.
yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's still there. So who was the real killer?
See that I do love that. We
That
have
is
zero
just
idea.
the ultimate question, plot twist of the movie. That right there at the very end. And the way it ended too, nothing creepier to me with like a classic slasher is how that ended. The body in the window, the little candle flickering, you just barely
Mhm.
see her silhouette, and that phone call, like, man, this is all, it's going to restart now.
Yep.
And
That's
you just, man, you feel like you're really there, and you're like, shit, almost like this is going to all happen over again. So I love that. I absolutely
God,
love that.
you said it even better. Those scenes are really I love
Mm,
that you mentioned on the fact that we're actually coming out of the room where Jess is sleeping, and we're kind of in this POV of walking through the hallway of the upstairs, and we're also in the POV of going up the steps basically. And I love that because it gives us this sense of stillness. It's quiet.
yeah,
It's we feel like we're safe now, but we're not. That
no,
that person is still in the house. The threat is still very much real.
oh, yeah.
I'm glad we touched on that because this whole movie, there's things about it that bother the shit out of me, but
Hmm.
this makes up for it in some way. So I'm very glad that that's the case. I'm glad that they could close this off with a bold ending. Leave it up in the air. Let the people try to figure it out. I like
Right,
that.
right. So I think it's time we get into our ratings. I think we hit the nail on the head pretty much there. So with Rotten Tomatoes, like I always tell
I'm so
the
curious here.
audience first, I just looked this up before hopping on to get everything prepped. Audience score of 76%
Oh,
and a critic score of 73. So
woo!
damn near tied, dude.
Wow, 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 wow. Okay.
Well, based off your reaction, we might we might be in the same ballpark.
That's
So
crazy.
I know.
That's
So to
that's
me,
wild, man.
anything between a 7 and 8 is like a great movie. So mid 70s here, average. Um, Critics and audience obviously loved it. So again, for me, it's just you have to think about this early 70s. Imagine that the time this came out and you're watching it that long ago. Kudos, because I'd be shitting bricks
Yep.
probably. You got to think about that. So yeah, I was surprised, and it seems like you're surprised too.
Yeah. But like you say, that fear in that time in the 70s was very, very much lucid. It was right there, man.
Yeah,
People were
yeah,
getting offed. Serial killers were running rampant. It was a fucked up time in a lot of ways. So if we have a lot of reviews from people of that generation, maybe that sways the scores. I have a
yeah.
hard time seeing our generation watching this and putting it in that ball range, that ballpark of scores. Not to say I didn't enjoy it in some manner. I can dive
Right.
right into my review. Why don't I?
Yeah,
So
go for it. Go for it. Let's do it.
overall, the opening scenes were okay. I like it's a Christmas horror movie. They did that on par with what I wanted. We have the Christmas music in the background. We have all the Christmas lights up. The old brick sorority house I thought was a decent setting for this. The hallways were creepy. The characters were okay, but I must say there was some pretty subpar acting here. This was one part that I did not quite enjoy as much. There was a lot of cheesy scenes here with overacting. And I think with some actresses and actors, they try to put too much into it to the point that it's hard to believe them in a sense. So that bothered me a little bit throughout. The
Yeah.
plot and the direction, I think we jumped back and forth quite a bit between scenes with the couples arguing about this and that. Didn't really add anything to the movie except for Peter a little bit. Chris, like I said, his character had like no significance at all. So
Hmm.
the acting was just okay. The ending, though, that's what did it for me. That's what's bringing my score up to a 5. That's the only reason.
Mm.
Even 5.
Even five. Okay.
Yep.
Well, I I think we're gonna be in the same ballpark. So you hit everything about as perfectly as it could be said. Kudos. I have to give kudos because for me, it's a personal thing. How this was a slasher, the POV shots, first person things, the just camaraderie of a killer in your house. I absolutely love that. So kudos to that. Um, this movie, it's a great movie, and I really, really, really give props to it because you have to imagine yourself watching it back in 1974. No matter how old you were, whatever. If you were living in that time and this movie came out and it's present day and it's going to be scary. It is. This is the voices, the effects, this killer they had, this ominous person we never even got to see, done pretty good. So for me, my biggest thing was the pacing of this movie. Um, the pacing was horrible. I think they could have ramped it up way sooner, especially when a guy's basically living in your attic. Um, and to me, the other big thing too was how do the police not investigate the entire house? If you think about it,
That's terrible policing.
you know what I mean? Like, hey, let's at least search not just her bedroom, but like the entire house, including the attic. So, realism versus, well, whatever. It's a movie, like whatever. Take your pick on that. But overall, like again, I'm trying to put myself in that time period. Would have been great. But for me, in my rating, it's higher than yours just
Okay.
because I love the slasher horror genre. It's my favorite
It's
all-time
your
goat.
wheelhouse, baby. That's your wheelhouse.
So, but for me, I'm going to give it 5.6.
Okay.
I'm right above the 5.5 mark.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just nudge it to a 5.6. Um, but yeah, crazy how you gave it a 5. But yes, my initial rating was 6.3
Yeah.
because it's like, man, just it definitely raised with how that ended, for sure. How that movie ended, phenomenal, phenomenal. Just it gives such Christmas vibes, and then it's like, boom, you hear that phone, and like, man, everything is just gonna restart now. And yeah, small town, wherever they're at. I don't think they gave a setting.
I don't think they ever did.
Um, I don't think so. I could look it up, but um, probably just a mid-sized town and just girls going missing, dude. Just like you said in the 70s with serial killers. So for me, the whole serial killer thing, the 70s vibes, the Christmas atmosphere, it's like, man, nothing gets better than that sometimes. But yeah,
Well,
that'll be
that's
my rating. 5.6. But yeah, hats off to this movie. It was my first time watching it. Was it your first time watching it?
it was actually, yes.
It was
I've
okay.
seen it multiple times. I've came across it when looking up horror movies
Yeah.
online. Just never gave it a watch. And when I
Hmm.
was looking at ones to watch here, I just thought it'd be a fun one to talk about. And I did enjoy talking about it. I
Yeah.
didn't touch on the scariness as much in my review. I like that you mentioned it a little bit. It was creepy at times. And those last scenes for the climax
Yeah.
were genuinely frightening, and I did enjoy them. Those
Hmm.
shots of the upstairs hallways were they were perfect. They really did do those well. I
Hmm.
wish we had more of it. It's unfortunate, but the ending, I think we can both agree on, was pretty darn good. So,
Dude, it
with
was good.
that
I
being
like that.
said, would you recommend it, Money? And if you recommend it, on what level?
I personally, honestly, would not recommend it.
Mhm.
For your avid horror movie, viewer. But for December, yes. For December, this time of the month, yes. And like we said earlier, it is a franchise series, so there's kind of like a trilogy out. There's 3 movies, and yeah, if it's December or coming up on December, maybe Thanksgiving's over at this point. Get into it. Get into it. I personally am going to try to watch Xmas or Black Xmas. It's the second one. Um, Came out. Let's see, in literally December 25th, 2006. So that's kind of crazy on Christmas Day. So I think Bob Clark has some uh part taking in this, but I don't know exactly when his death was. So would have to look that up. But um I just think they're gonna get better from here if you think about it. Um like everything could be improved for the most part. Not trying to be too negative, but again, you have to remember it's the 70s, so this is
Mhm.
how it was. Um, this isn't like Saw or Evil Dead Rise. So
It's completely different.
it's completely different, but
I
it's the realism
yeah.
in it, and really putting yourself in those situations. So um I got nothing else, man. I am so glad we hopped on. We had this episode, and it's been fun. I've loved doing this. This is our 11th episode. We are getting content out there for you guys. So I couldn't be happier, is all really I gotta say.
That's the biggest thing. I just love sharing in this passion with you, Money.
Yes.
And then for other people that enjoy this genre of film, it's something special to me. And I know there's a lot of other people out there that feel the same way.
Hmm.
I would recommend this for a Christmas movie, for a horror flick. All around, probably not. Would I watch it on a random day outside of Christmas season? No, I would not.
Hmm.
But I'm really, really happy we talked about it and we touched on some of the pros of this movie, because there are some. And I think it is worth mentioning those things that were done right in the film. So overall, I think it was a very constructive episode, and I look forward to the next episodes to come.
We love it. And we love you guys, the audience. Check out all of our other stuff. Like I said, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, TikTok. We're on there. And as always, it's been a pleasure. And stay tuned for the next episode, probably in a week from today or tomorrow. So to be determined on what that is. So stay tuned. And we've been scratching the surface.